Hold on to your butts, Need for Speed is fun again. Heat is a marked return to form for a series that's been spinning its wheels for the past decade. By plucking ingredients from a few of the franchise's most fondly remembered games, developer Ghost has finally built a racer that feels fittingly faithful to its roots. Heat is hardly revolutionary, but it is fast, fun, and streets ahead of 2017's properly disappointing Need for Speed Payback. It's a back-to-basics approach with some modern modifications, and it works. Look closely, and you can see the classic underground tone and the hectic cop chases of the original much-revered Most Wanted, along with some welcome tweaks inspired by its contemporaries. Palm City is Heat's new playground, and the neon-drenched, Miami-inspired map is a great fit for the classic Need for Speed motif. The city itself is the big highlight here, especially compared to the bland countryside surrounding it, but there are a few other cool spots that reward exploration. It's obviously only a sliver of the size of something as wildly ambitious as The Crew 2, but it's far denser and more interesting than Payback. And, crucially, there are far fewer momentum killers. Even stone walls and trees crumble rather than bring you to a dead stop, and that helped keep my pace high and my pulse higher. Heat's interesting hook is that there are basically two distinct experiences to be gleaned here, and switching between them is done manually. Daytime Palm City is defined by regular, sanctioned street racing on marked courses for cash payouts. It's decent but relatively plain looking when you slow down enough to spot details. Night, on the other hand, is all about illegal racing and running from the fuzz to build up rep points. It looks amazing, especially in the rain, and races are more exciting thanks to dodging traffic and aggressive cops. I like the power it gives me to chase whatever I need at the time. Both are needed to progress through Heat's story though, which still plays out like an off-brand Fast and Furious. But at least the writing's a lot more restrained than the regularly cringe-worthy Payback.
I don't like waiting.
And I don't like watching you eat.
Cop chases aren't restricted to preset time trial routes like in Payback, but they are a fair bit tougher. There's now a damage meter for your car, so while you can fight back a little and earn instant repairs from gas stations up to 3 times a night, if you pull too much rough stuff, you'll wreck and be arrested. I don't mind that chases are biased towards the cops, but I do hate that the AI cheats by suddenly spawning in cops in close proximity out of nowhere, and the busted timer is absolute baloney. I can't see a need for a time limit if your car can only take a finite level of damage anyway. I get that it's all in service of making the act of building and banking huge rep scores a thrilling risk, but if there's no one actually in front or behind me, getting busted thanks to an arbitrary timer and losing all that rep is nonsense. I haven't tossed my controller through the TV yet, but I've been closer than I'm comfortable with. That's an OLED, man!
Got these ready to go. They're not top of the line, but they're good.
There's a good selection of cars available, but the roster may be less impressive if you're a veteran of Payback, as the grand majority of the garage is paid forward from that game. Ferrari has climbed back on board and there's a nice spread of them, but the nerds at Toyota are still absent. It's still a shame to see strangely few icons from the 90s in a game that seems custom made for them. When I got behind the wheel, I immediately noticed the handling in Heat has been tweaked to have drifts initiated by getting off the accelerator and pumping it again while turning into a corner. I'm not really a fan of the technique. The good news is that you can toggle it back to brake to drift, which feels more intuitive to me, like a quick dip of the clutch to spike the revs while staying mashed on the throttle. Drifting feels a bit slower in Heat than Payback, but you have more control of car angle, which has made the drift events quite enjoyable. Heat also does away with Payback's requirement for specific cars for specific classes, and every vehicle I've bought so far can be tuned and retuned for grip, drift, or a compromise in between. On that note, this upgrade system is a gigantic improvement from Payback. Beyond a few reward items, there are no more hoops to jump through to apply cosmetics, and no more poker machine speed cards to pump up your whip's performance. Good riddance. Want a part? Buy it! It's the way it should be. I'm only really baffled by the presence of drag tires without a dedicated drag mode. Another big new addition is engine swaps, which are great because they can increase the overall potential horsepower of cars that previously would have hit a premature performance ceiling. But the best new option is exhaust tuning, which allows honing of the already excellent exhaust notes available. This is some straight up car gear catnip, and I am all about it. Elsewhere, the livery editor is still top-notch, and stance options remain for those of you who like their cars to look like Herbie on the brink of death. You know, after he got tossed out of that cruise ship and dragged out of a river. There's avatar customization too, if you value that and desperately want to see this man's midriff. There's actually a whole parade of prats you can select to be your driver, although none of them look like they could really tell a carburetor from a can of kombucha.
Dipshit. Nice name.
While Need for Speed Heat feels a little more like a mosaic of existing concepts rather than something especially trend-setting, Ghost has certainly scraped these ideas from some of the most loved games in the now 25-year-old series and formed them into something respectable. Heat doesn't all sizzle, but it's definitely far toastier than I'd expected, and it's the most impressive Need for Speed game in many years. For more racing thrills and spills, check out our reviews for Grid and Wreckfest. For everything else, stay with IGN.